Good morning, everyone. The Arab region is exposed to stress factors that are challenging its socioeconomic development and increase in its fragility to conflict. The region is being severely hit by climate change and freshwater scarcity. By 2030, the effect of climate change is expected to reduce renewable water resources by another 20% through declining precipitation, rising temperature, sea level rise, and expanding seawater intrusion into coastal aquifers. Desertification and land degradation are on the rise, fueled by both temperature increase but also by inadequate management of rangeland and fragile dryland ecosystems. Over the past years, the region has been increasingly affected by violent conflicts, leading to the fact that 50 million people are in need of some kind of humanitarian assistance. And over 15 million people were forcibly displaced, according to UNHCR report 2019. The causes of the conflict has manifestations that go beyond the land management. But good land management has a role to play to ensure that societies stabilize and put in place sustainable and inclusive patterns of land use that will sustain reconciliation, peace, and economic development and set the foundation for sustainable peace in the years ahead. Not differently than other regions in the world, Arab states have been badly hit by combined effects of COVID-19 pandemic, which exposed the vulnerabilities and inequalities in societies. The consequences of the pandemic are likely to be deep and long-lasting. The objective of this session actually to highlight the correlation and importance of good land management to increase countries' resilience to climate change and epidemics, and to pave the ground for sustainable peace. Through the contributions of panelists, specific countries' experiences, lessons learned, and recommendations will be shared and reflected upon to guide the thinking and future interventions of the Arab countries in crisis sensitive and land governance. We will share with you a number of questions to just give you a heads up of the issues that you might be looking at and speaking to the audience. The first question is, what land governance challenges related to climate change have you faced in your country or in your work? Second question, what land governance challenges related to violent conflict have you faced in your country or in your work? What land governance challenges related to COVID-19 have you faced in your country or in your work? And the last one, what should the international community do to support Arab countries to address and prevent crises through land governance related interventions? Thank you so much. Now we will start with the speakers. We have with us Dr. Ahmed Al-Atrash, UN Habitat Palestine, together with Ms. Mona Al-Qutb, UN Habitat Palestine as well. They're going to talk about recovery plan for land and water settlement commission from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will give a brief overview on the bios of the speakers. Dr. Ahmed Al-Atrash, a Senior National Urban Program Officer, Special Human Settlement Program for Palestinian people. Dr. Ahmed Al-Atrash is an urban development specialist. He has extensive experience working with think tanks, academic institutions, NGOs, and UN agencies in issues related to geopolitical and strategic planning, governance, reform, resilience, and sustainable development. Mr. Ahmed is currently leading Spatial Planning and Development Program at UN Habitat in the West Bank. Ahmed holds a PSc in Civil Engineering, MSc in Urban Planning and Landscape Architecture, and PhD in Special Planning from TU Dortmund University in Germany. Ms. Munal Qutb, Project Coordinator at UN Habitat Palestine. Munal Qutb was born and raised in Jerusalem. She received her Bachelor of Architecture Science from Ryerson University in Canada and her Master of Science in Project Management from University of Liverpool. She has 15 years of experience working with several local and international organizations in gender, program management, and sustainable development, and is currently a project coordinator at UN Habitat Palestine. Dr. Ahmed and Ms. Muna, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Wael, for the introduction. We don't have access to the camera, so if you can help us with that, that would be great. But we hope that you can hear us very well. So we are presenting today the recovery plan for the Land and Water Settlement Commission from the COVID-19 pandemic. Important to mention that this has been prepared under the framework of an EU-funded project, Achieving Planning and Land Rights in Area C of the West Bank. This was in support for the Land and Water Settlement Commission, a Palestinian governmental institution that focuses on land settlement issues. The work that we do, next slide please.
Dr. Ahmed, can you hear me? Please give us a few seconds to manage the video, please. I mean the presentation. Thank you.
Just to make benefit of the time, just to introduce that we have partners in this project. It's the EU, of course. From the government side, we work closely with the Prime Minister's Office, with the Land Water Settlement Commission, and with other development partners.
Dr. Ahmed, the organizer asking you to share the presentation from your side, please. Can you do that?
We can do that. We tried, but it's not working.
Okay. And okay, the presentation will be posted from our side, and they are trying to help showing you on the screen. Thank you.
Now it's working, Dr.
Excellent. Excellent. Please proceed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do you see the slides now? Come.
Not yet, but I think you can proceed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So in our work with the Land Water Settlement Commission, we are supporting the land administration and the overall land governance processes in Palestine. Just to reflect on the coercive environment in place, we have, of course, a prolonged Israeli military occupation, and we follow a human rights-based approach where we acknowledge the Israeli authorities as main duty barrier and the BA as a secondary duty barrier, meaning that we are helping the government here to respond to their obligations to the citizens by looking on individual and collective rights, including Bedouins, pastoralists, women groups, and other vulnerable and minority groups. Just to reflect that, we are also supporting on the policy and technical level. We have our partners from GLTM and the consortium of implementing partners, including local government units, consultants, academia, and NGOs. The support here should be recognized within the government reform plan that was adopted in 2017. That was also in harmony with the national policy agenda here in Palestine and the vision for the national special plan that started in 2012. Also, State of Palestine has adopted voluntarily the SDGs, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and the New Urban Agenda in 2015, 2016, respectively, along with other global framework of relevance to the Palestinian context. In our work, it's important also to acknowledge that Land Water Settlement Commission is working across the geopolitical divide known as areas A, B, C, where areas A and B is under Palestinian Authority control, and area C where Israel retain full control, including on planning and land management issues. But the Commission is working with support from the international community, including UN Habitat, at the bequest of the EU, to register as well individual and collective rights in Area C, meaning there is a huge gap. As we can see, by end of 2020, we still have more than 1 million and 1.5 million in areas A and B and area C respectively that needs to be covered. Our intention with this recovery plan is to support the Commission on the institutional level with their strategic objective is to finish a survey of land in the West Bank by 2023. It's quite an ambitious plan that was hit hard by the economic fallout and the COVID-19 ramifications that we are dealing with. But we started the work on the recovery plan by focusing on the local authorities that has been from the very beginning defined as in the driving seat for the standardized land registration processes. As such, we have done some kind of harmonization to the customary law and other tools at the global level. We have done an assessment to local authorities' response to COVID-19, making benefit of law number 1 for the year 1997, and the United Nations Secretary in New York that developed a framework, a matrix to measure the response of local authorities to COVID-19. As well, we have benefited from UN Habitat guidelines for local authorities, leading local adaptation of COVID-19 to informal settlements. And this was very well acknowledged within the overall UNCT COVID-19 Development System Response Plan to support the government of Palestine response, socioeconomic response to the COVID-19 in general. I'll give the floor now to my colleague Muna, who will provide more lights and providing some details on some of the ways of doing that we have adopted with the local authorities here and the national authorities. Muna.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. In consultation with the different departments of the Land and Water Settlement Commission, the challenges, obstacles, and opportunities of the recovery plan were discussed to identify the following objectives: ensuring necessary technical staff and financial resources, mobilizing the community and advocacy, accelerating the settlement process, and reviewing the regulatory framework. We are now at the 6-month mark, and all objectives are in progress. But for the purposes of this paper, 2 of these objectives are highlighted, the 1st and the 4th, taking into account that all the objectives are interconnected. The first objective, which is providing the Commission and its settlement offices with the necessary technical staff, has achievements so far, starting with the creation of a gender unit at the Commission, the analysis of the Commission staff by age, gender, education, and location, which is to be followed by the identification of their capacity needs. Also, a total of 50 out of the 150 planned new employees have been approved by the central government for employment at the Commission, in addition to 4 UN Habitat interns seconded by UN Habitat. The gender analysis of the Commission conducted by the newly formed gender unit shows that 90% of the Commission staff are below the age of 40 years old, 47% of whom are women. Out of the 745 employees at the Commission, 337, which is 45%, are women as seen in Figure 1. And women hold 36% of management positions with concentration in upper management as seen in Figure 2, which is way above the average proportion of women in managerial positions at the national level in Palestine. That stands at nearly 20.2%. Under the 4th objective of accelerating the settlement process and its procedures, including within the COVID-19 pandemic guidelines, achievements so far include 8 recommendations, 3 of which are already being implemented, which are the addition of gender information to the Commission's forms and tables, the revision of tables of rights to produce gender disaggregated data that will give a much clearer picture of land tenure of Palestinian women, including size, area, and value of land owned by women. The results are expected to be presented in an expert group meeting later this year. But for example, a sample of one of the communities in the northern governance shows the percentage of women owning plots as 36%, which makes the picture look not so bad. However, when comparing the size of land owned by women, the size is only 19% of the total land. And the third is the piloting and incorporation of the social tenure domain model into the land information system at the LWSC, where the participatory land settlement and mapping of land rights just commenced in 11 communities for a total of around 100,000 dunums that will benefit around 66,000 direct beneficiaries, of which around 33,000 are female. In conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic greatly threatened the work of the Commission, resulting in major delays to achieving their goal of completing surveying works within the set time frame ending in the year 2023. But despite the COVID-19 crisis, LWSC kept the momentum of completing land settlement with a total of around 156,000 dunums completed in 2020. When compared to around 730,000 dunums in 2019, it is only %. However, hopes are high to speed the momentum again in light of the recovery plan. The work of the Commission is necessary for Palestine and its government to fulfill its obligations towards ratified agreements and the Global Development Agenda, particularly the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the new Urban Agenda Habitat 3. And especially its commitments in the areas of providing adequate and affordable housing, protecting and developing cultural heritage, increasing green spaces, providing safe and accessible public spaces for citizens, Goal 11, as well as for the resilience of Palestinian communities. In addition to the recovery plan scoring as highly gender responsive in an external evaluation using the gender evaluation criteria, target indicators are already reflecting achievements to the plan. But most importantly, this recovery plan takes into consideration the socioeconomic aspects related to land issues, including embedding gender equality and human rights-based approaches, user rights, continuum of land rights, and participatory approaches, empowerment of marginalized communities, and leaving no one behind, responding to the coercive environment present, results-based management, and identification of target indicators. It also includes assessments of existing resources and integration of new models such as social responsive land settlement, standardized rates, and developer exactions, new ways of working and piloting, reflecting that these issues are worth integrating into all strategic plans, even during crises when other priorities and time constraints are factors in rapid response, in order to ensure the continual prioritization and upgrading of essential work. The good practice here entails the taking advantage of the undesirable situation to produce desirable effects for the community. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Dr. Wael. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed and Ms. Mona, for your elaboration on the recovery plan for Land and Water Settlement Commission from the COVID-19 pandemic point of view. I think shedding the lights on supporting the policy agenda development of the Commission in planning and land management, and also the concept of supporting the gender mainstreaming and land ownership for women. It's a very important issue in the context of Palestine. We will now move to the second speaker, Ms. Domitille. She will speak about water governance and tenure approaches for securing rights and advancing climate resilience. Before that, I would like to give an overview about her profile. She is a Chief Technical Advisor for the Food and Agriculture Organization, Regional Office for Near East and North Africa, She is an agricultural specialist with a specialization in environmental impact assessment, rural engineering, and water resources management. With 25 years of experience, she worked, excuse me? Okay, sorry, I'll come to that. Okay, she worked in different regions of the world in environmental performance, agricultural water management, water assessment. For the last 15 years, focused more specifically on participatory land and water management for agriculture. Currently, she coordinates a regional project on water sustainability in agriculture in MENA region, uses water accounting to inform decision and sustainable development. I'm sorry, I need to add that Ms. Sofia Espinosa, also working from for FAO, she will also speak with Ms. Domitille, and the overview about her profile is she has more than 7 years of experience in land tenure related issues. She has focused her research, PhD, and professional work on analysis of the social and cultural factors that influence land transactions, the legal pluralism, and the set of rights associated with the governance of land and water tenure. Recently, she's coordinating a regional initiative in the Sahel to support the implementation of the VGGT to improve pastoral land governance, and she is also working to support the testing of water tenure assessment technology in Senegal, Sri Lanka, and Rwanda. Ladies, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be with you. I will start the presentation and then we'll pass the floor to my colleague who will add further details. So I think the presentation is already shared. Next slide. We already had the chance to have a very good overview in the introduction section, but I just wanted to remind some key facts that are important for the debates that would like to just bring forward here. So very clearly, you have an increased demand for land, water, and food that is coming with the increased population, migration. You have all these multiple dimensions that just increase the pressure on natural resources, increase interconnectedness between sectors, and we see growing inequalities. There is also to take into account, I mean, climate change, of course, worsen the situation. So what is really important here is we can see that to address the complexity and to be able to implement the Sustainable Development Goals that aim to just create all these connections, we do need an appropriate governance arrangement. There are many issues of governance of water and use, management and use of water and the other natural resources that are directly linked to the water tenure rights. Yet, despite the growing awareness of the urgent need to address water scarcity challenge, we have really a lack of information about how people access and use their resources, transfer water in practices, and this is particularly true in rural and remote areas where water is the most used. So the presentation, what we'd like to highlight is how we could understand better the water governance and tenure and why it is needed to lead a major transformation. And you can see already that we highlighted some key facts on the water tenure, why it's important to understand it. You can just see that it helps to assess institutional weaknesses. It can help to map and protect local rights, the practice and dynamics we have seen in the previous presentation, so that the importance of understanding who owns what and has access to what. Identify the conflict of interest and concerns, we implement, I mean, we look at the water governance, also looking at how information, technical information can support debates. That's where we use water accounting. And we also think it's very important to build the coalition of actors. Next slide. So when you look at I think I just, we jumped plus one slide, but I just, yes. So yes, this one, thank you. So the water governance is not new. In fact, water governance and water tenure is not new. We started, you had the debate, starting the voluntary guideline on responsible governance and tenure for land, forestry and fishery, that in fact started incorporating also the question of water tenure. But through the evolutions and the discussions, and when it was finally approved, it was decided not to take, to incorporate water tenure because it was not yet sufficiently understood. So as a follow-up, there was a further work that was done, but it was still recommended, for example, in 2015 in the the high-level report of the Committee of Food Security, just that recommended to consider water tenure. And in 2019, an expert consultation organized in FAO with ELI and RRI just agreed on the typology and the definitions and the need to just have an approach, a methodology to just assess properly water tenure. So we have now incorporated the two methodology, one that just look at the bigger picture on water governance and one that just zoom in and just understand better the right questions with the water tenure assessment. And this is being piloted in at project level, at country level, to just refine the methodology and just be able in the long term to support policy practitioners. Next. So just to kind of give a very quick, next slide, overview on the bigger picture, the water governance assessment. You just need to understand how to frame what is the problem really at hand. And so the methodology adopts a 4-step approach, defining the problem. That's the most difficult, but it just kind of requires a good context overview. That's why water accounting is very helpful. Getting the stakeholder perspective, trying to understand the possible cause for the problem at hand. And then you go in more detail in the analysis of institution, the rules and processes, organization and actors. And if water tenure is a critical issue for your problem, then you just have to dive in further in the water tenure. The political economy analysis, a first step there, you just go in more complex analysis on how the power relations, how interest and of certain actors will influence the situation or the evolution of policies and strategies. And finally, you just kind of go to the level of defining your interventions and deciding on trade-offs and the risk you are ready to take and the possible strategies. So I will now pass the floor to my colleague, Sofia Espinosa, who will just go in more detail on the water tenure assessment.
Thank you, Domiti. Good morning to everyone. I'm going to talk today more about, as Domiti said, about the water tenure assessment. This is a project led by FAO that comes actually with the first hypothesis that we cannot manage what we don't know. So what we want to know here is, that's why how we call the project, Knowing Water Better Towards a Fair and More Sustainable Access to Natural Resources. And here we want to build on water governance and water accounting, these two parts of what to know water, and into to zoom in what is water tenure. For a methodological point of view, also building on the debates on the voluntary guidelines from land, fisheries, and forests, we build these definition of water tenure as the relationships, whatever legally or customarily defined between people as individuals or groups with respect to water resources. So how we look at these relationships in the ground? This project is looking to do an assessment at 3 levels. First, at national level, with an assessment of the policy and the legal framework in regards to water resources to map the rules, but also their implementation. The second level of assessment will be the regional level or the catchment level. Usually we'll look at the catchment of a river, one of the main rivers in the country. Just to say, maybe this project is testing in Rwanda, Senegal, and Sri Lanka. And in Senegal, the regional level is in the Senegal River Basin, because the idea is also to focus in the future also at the Senegal River Basin with their relationships with Mali and Mauritania. That will be the regional level at the catchment level, where we see where we focus on the actual uses and users of water resources, but also into the governance institution. Not only the formal institutions, but also the customary institutions, with the idea that institutions, we want to know who has the power to decide on the water allocation and the water rights of other people. And the third level. Yes, sorry. Hello. Can you hear me?
Did
somebody had a question?
No, I think it
Sorry,
was just
this is
somebody speaking.
the translators. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. And the third part of the assessment will be at local level. This will be more at community level, where we want to see the local practices and how the other levels of assessment, the legal, the user, and the governance institutions go into practice. We can relate into the daily practice of the people and how they use water resources. So this is the Know What project, and this is really looking at more at the tenure part of water. So where are we now? You can find, of course, all the details of these 2 projects, FAO leading projects, in our article. But just to see, in Jordan and Lebanon, we're looking at the equity in water allocation and distribution. In Morocco, we're looking at the aquifer context and equity in access to groundwater. In Palestine, we're actually looking at the water allocation and distribution. This is more in the water governance assessment, and in the water tenure, where is to say this project just started last year, and we already, the first step has been to raise awareness on their over what is water tenure as itself, and we have started the preliminary legal research in 3 countries, and we will shortly start the research, the field research with sociologists and the customary component, let's say. For us, what is important and what is for the future, the idea is that better understanding water tenure and water governance can lead to technically valid and politically feasible policies for water management and use, but these can also increase equity and sustainability in water allocation systems and regimes. These will also help us, and these I want to stress how all the panelists yesterday also emphasized the importance on understanding better the relationships between water and land tenure, and how these can actually need to be look more into details for finally preventing conflicts in the future over water, but also over land. And as a future, also for these initiatives, defining from the piloting at country level, we'll want to feed the regional conferences and experiences on lessons learned. And all these piloting also is gonna, the inputs are gonna go into building the voluntary guidelines on sustainable allocation mechanism on water resources that have been a request from the League of Arab States. And the idea is also to fill the request of other states, and not only from the Arab League, but also the other states that wanted the water to be part of the voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure, and to mobilize interest to these to another and voluntary guidelines of, why not, responsible governance of water tenure. Thank you. And thank you to all. And if you want, you can have a look on in detail, of course, of these two methodologies and the results we're already having in the ground, and the collaborations we have around these two methodologies and projects. Thank you so much.
Related to the interventions and supporting the local government in a number of countries, especially talking about the regional program that supporting a number of countries in MENA region on water sustainability and water tenure. For example, the program that you are managing in Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, and Palestine, but also it includes a number of other countries in the world. I would like now to ask colleagues to play or post the video from Mr. Harris Silod from the World Bank. Mr. Harris is a senior economist, Development Research Group, the World Bank. Mr. Harris is a senior economist with the Development Research Group of the World Bank in Washington, D.C. He's one of the lead authors of the World Bank report on land issues in the Middle East and North Africa, which is currently under preparation. He has held various positions within the World Bank since 2008, including land policy expert seconded by the government of France and chair of the World Bank's Land Policy and Administration Thematic Group. Prior to joining the World Bank, he was a researcher at the French National Institute for Agricultural Research and associate professor at the Paris School of Economics. He also taught economics at various other institutions in France, including the École Polytechnique and the École Nationale de la Statistique. He holds a PhD in economics from Sorbonne University, PSc, MSc in statistics from ENSA, and BBA, MBA from ESCP Europe. The video will play now. Thank you very much.
by civil conflict and forces. How the civil war in Syria affected but in larger sense, the impact of conflict on Basically, there are two channels. The first channel is a direct destruction of farmland, tree orchard, of infrastructure for irrigation. The second channel is related to the population movements. There's forced displacement associated with conflict that can result in labor shortages, and in the end, lower productivity in the agricultural sector. What is also interesting is that the impact of conflicts is not only felt in the conflict countries themselves, but also in neighboring countries, especially within its population. So the objective of our research is to measure the impact of the Syrian civil war along the Syria-Turkey border. And I will explain in a few slides why we focus on the Syria. So what are our research questions? For the research questions, we have four issues that we like to shed light on. The first is where do the cropland gains and the cropland losses? In other words, what is the extent of the phenomenon? The second issue, we try to shed light on the mechanisms that are involved. Academic, the direct effect, or other effects to population displacement and migration. The third question is whether those effects are transitory or if they end up being permanent.
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for this technical glitch, and we will play this video after this. I will give the floor to the next speaker. After that, we will play the video. I will give the floor to Ms. Rula Maya. She will speak about land administration and its role for reaching food safety and peace building towards a new paradigm for sustainable development in rural and urban areas. I would like to give an overview about Ms. Rula's profile. Ms. Rula is a visiting assistant professor at the University of Sharjah. She holds a PhD in urbanism management, management of the sustainable development policies from University of Paris East in 2003. She has more than 20 years of academic and practical experience, work at the High National School of Architecture in Normandy, France, and associate professor at Damascus University. UNASQA advisor for housing reconstruction, UNDP project manager for support strategic plan implementation in the state of Kuwait, UNDP project director for strengthening the institutional capacity of the parliament in Syria, advisor and director of the Regional Planning and Sustainable Development at the Planning and International Cooperation Commission in Syria. He's an expert for UNFPA and the European Union. Ms. Rula, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present this award about land administration. No, let's go. One minute. Land administration and its role in peace. It's go automatically, and I don't want this issue. I will present my paper about land administration and its role for reaching food safety and peace building in Syria towards a new paradigm for sustainable development in rural and urban areas. So as we know, the conflict in Syria has entered in its 10th year with no political solution in sight. The Syrian crisis considered as one of the largest and most destructive contemporary humanitarian crises in the modern world. We have three conflicts at the same time. Armed conflict for 14 years since 2011 till today, and the climate change with waves of drought for 10 years since 2000 till 2010, and COVID pandemic 2020 till today as all in the world. The conflict has left very large economic and social damage, destroyed infrastructure, led to a sharp contraction in the national economy, and created the largest humanitarian refugee crisis in the modern world in the region, in the Arab region and else. I will start to show you the situation analysis at the first and the impact of each crisis on social and economic life. In March 2011, the number of population in Syria was 21 million before the conflict began. It's estimated that the conflict claimed over 400,000 lives, about 2 million wounded. As you know, a large percentage of them are disabled. Each died will give 5% enabled. The national poverty rate it's become more than 80% in 2021. About 5.5 Syrian refugees in February 2021, and more than 9 million of people were in food security, and 1 million severely food insecure. The conflict has led to destruction and weakening the economic and social infrastructure in Syria strongly, and impacted the people's life and safety in all its dimensions. The impact of climate change was very strong and deep. ACSAT announced in 2009 the early warning for desertification. So 68% of lands in Syria are susceptible to be in desert lands, and it's very difficult, as we see in this figure. The waves of drought, which affected Syria between 2000 and 2010, increased desertification and caused by climate change and human factors, and led to, in consequence, to land degradation and for flora, fauna, and human communities. The forced displacement people increase. We have, especially from north and east of Syria, 60,000 of farming family left their home and lands to move looking for alternative works between 2007 and 2009. Syria was in economic crisis and aggraved the food insecurity and poverty status before the conflict. This is important information. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, this is the third crisis. We have till today 4,000 cases of COVID and 921 days. This is not a big number in comparison with another countries, but the problem, the impact of this crisis on people's life, the rising on food and fuel prices 200% more than the last year, and 20 times higher than the pre-crisis costs. This is the main problem. The people didn't have more income or sources to buy food and to live in normally life. In addition, to multiple crises related to conflict, there are many factors which affect negatively the fragile socio-economic situation in Syria. So, three conflicts, three crises, conflict, climate change, and COVID-19 affected the people's life, social and economic development, and the impact we have Syria today at the head of food insecurity map. If we if we can read the numbers in Egypt, for example, for 5 million, Sudan 7, Morocco 1.8 million, and in Syria today it's more. We have 9.3 million of people in food insecurity, with 1 million severely food insecure. So the problem is very big, and we should take this factor in consideration. So the consequence today, no political solution in sight. We have still violence, armed conflict, severe economic sanctions, crisis of refugees. This is at international level. At local level, we have still degradation of economic and social and environmental context, productivity reduced, prices increased, loss of jobs, degradation of livelihood. In consequence, the impact, it's the people's life, poverty and food insecurity. So food deprivation, expected age of life are decreased, absence of safety and security in all its dimensions. The impact of this crisis, it's also urbanization and land degradation at the same time. As we see in this map, the urban development in Syria increased from 51.9% in 2000 to 55% in 2020. Even there are refugees, but we have another issue. It recorded the urban development 76% in certain cities by the end of 2014. In 40% of people, that's mean around 3 million of internal displaced people in Syria hosted in the big cities as Aleppo, Latakia, Tartus, and several cities in rural Damascus. So the agriculture, the acceleration of urbanization affected food systems. Agriculture contributed by 16% of Syrian economy till 2010, and it's become decreased to 9.5% in 2014. Around 35% of urban schools are not operating. More than 50% of hospitals in cities are not operational. Around 760,000 of housing units in Syrian cities were damaged. So the impact are very big. We cannot imagine the situation. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change confirmed that effective land administration ensures resilience, participatory and inclusive land use planning, monitoring and land cover change, sustainable resources management. So we have something to do with land management as a tool and a key for solution. In reference to United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, they are proposed 9 pathways of the framework for effective land administration, and they found that effective land administration support poverty eradication, food security, and can support ensuring dignity and equality through documentation, recording, and recognizing people-to-land relationships in all its forms, etc. This is a new study, and it's very important. So we can take some elements and develop it. And that's what I have done. To start to know how we can do, I started by analyzing the administration and planning system in Syria. The situation is not easy and not simple. It's very complicated. The level of planning, we have basically two levels, national level and local level. We have a regional planning gap. We didn't have in Syria regional planning level. So the Planning and International Cooperation Commission is responsible to develop and follow up social and economic development plan at national level in cooperation with sectoral ministers. So this is at national level. The Ministry of Local Administration, it developed master plans and land use in planning area in cooperation with General Directorate of Cadastral Affairs. They are created in 2010 Regional Planning Commission, but this Regional Planning Commission, it was related at the beginning to Minister of Local Administration and Environment, and recently it related to Ministry of Public Work and Housing. So it's a small directorate in the Ministry of Housing, and this directorate have no any authority on other entity, national entity. And the Minister of Agriculture and Agrarian Reform will develop a plans for agriculture in rural areas, and a Minister of Water Cooperation for Corporation for Land Reform in rural areas. So in general, we have duplication of work, lack of coordination and correlation, absence of land administration. There is no land administration system in Syria, or any tools or policies, lack of human and institutional capacities. As we know, land allows to represent a crucial part in the life of humanity. Land is a source of food. If we didn't have a system to organize this source, so we will have food insecurity. It's normal as a result. In consequence, the multiplicity of authority in Syria, the absence of a clear strategy and land administration use, tenure and development is a big issue to deal with today. I try to develop a paradigm which can assure food security in Syria. I try to clarify the main challenges and priority of actions at the three levels. We have at the first special framework, legal framework, and institutional framework. The challenges in the special framework, as we see, multiplicity of authority and actors in Syria, and absence of a clear strategy and clear roles. And each period, there are some changes, and we have never some specific authority or entity who follow up the land development system and land use. The rapid urbanization from 55% to 76% in the hosted city, informal housing, which is more than 45%, it's another challenge.
Dr. Rola, you have 5 minutes, please.
Okay, in 5 minutes I can finish. Okay, I will be faster. So there are some challenges in spatial, legal, and institutional. I have developed 3 goals to respond to each challenge. National program for urban-rural agriculture implemented and public participation enhanced, tenure system and law reformed, institutional capacity development strengthening. So, and with indicator to measure our progress. There is the priority actions and main outputs. This is the model of integrated frameworks, spatial, legal, and institutional. As we know, effective and efficient land administration system based on green cities and assure food security. This will be the principle of this concept or this model. This will assure the main outcomes of this concept is green, healthy cities and people, more jobs for women and youth, affordable food prices for people, decent income for people and families, closely connected urban and rural areas, reduce transport costs and energy, assure innovation food security for all Syrian people and integrated society and social peace. In consequence, as a result, Syria has lost more than 30 years of development, and that will have so long-term effects on future generations. Peace building in Syria needs and requests the cooperation of all local, national, regional, and international effort to ensure prosperity and well-being for all. And I would like to thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.